Hey, how's it going, guys? It's been a while since I made a watch video, and for this one, I'm gonna be talking about my, why I refuse to buy Tudors. Right? They are very tempting, right? They are very tempting to have as watches as part of your collection. And if you like Tudor, that's great, right? Just go get one. That's really what you want. But I'm gonna tell you why I just cannot see myself buying a Tudor. And so I have here, my reason is as follows. Yeah, I have here my Rolex Yachtmaster, which I recently got back from service a couple months ago. And the cost to service this Yachtmaster, which houses the 3135 movement, was 650 Canadian dollars, which is approximately 500 US. But if you were to get the newer Tudors, right? Tudor Black Bay, Pelagos with their in-house movements, I'm pretty sure the cost of service would exceed what it costs to service this with an independent. Because it's an in-house movement, you probably will have to take it back to the Tudor AD. So I think a conservative estimate would be about 1,000 Canadian dollars. Right, at the very cheapest, it would cost the same amount to service this 6-digit Rolex I have here, right? And so my case is that the cost of ownership for a Tudor, based on its market value, is actually, I would say, about 3 times more than what it costs to own a Rolex. Yeah, in terms of the proportion of its market value. Or I'd say this Yachtmaster is probably worth about 15,000 Canadian, and if you get like a Black Bay, I don't know, whatever, Tudor Pelagos or something, right, it'd probably be around like $5,000 with the in-house movement. So, roughly 3 times. This Rolex is roughly 3 times more than one of the newer Tudors. But yet the cost of servicing, if you go with an independent, is potentially less with the Rolex. Right, and Tudor, it started out as the poor man's Rolex, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? It was created, it was conceived as a more affordable option to Rolex. So the case, the bracelet, dial, everything was made to Rolex's standards. It just housed an ETA movement, and nothing wrong with ETA movements. Sure that they were mass produced, but they were also a lot cheaper to service. Now, I'm not sure about this, but don't quote me on this, but ETA, I believe, is owned by the Swatch Group, and I think they started to restrict selling of parts. So it just became harder to get parts and whatnot. So perhaps that was also a reason why Tudor decided to come up with their own in-house movements. Yeah. But that's the problem with in-house movements. Yeah, everybody wanted in-house this, in-house that. Right? The problem is that, the cost of ownership, the cost of servicing, dramatically goes up. Right. And that's the main reason why I just don't want to dabble into Tudor. Right? Don't get me wrong; they are beautiful watches. Yeah. I especially like the Pelagos. They got a new Pelagos GMT. I really like that watch. But you know, those watches, they go for like 6,000-7,000 Canadian. I mean, just stretch a little further, get yourself a Rolex Explorer 2, you know, or a 5-digit Submariner, right? I think those are much better buys and like better watches than any Black Bay 58 or Tudor Pelagos, right? So there are a lot of Tudor fanboys, but all I'm saying is that I don't think it's you know, Tudors are really worth it, to be honest. They're just not my cup of tea, I guess. When it comes to divers, I think if you're looking for a diver, and maybe go for the older Black Bays with the ETA movements. Yeah, those are a lot more affordable. The original Black Bays, I think those are worthwhile. You know, Tudors are Tudors. They're supposed to be more affordable Rolexes with a very great, sporty, timeless design. But yeah, this is what I've been wearing the most. Like my Deep Sea. Beautiful watch. I didn't realize. It's an amazing watch. I love the Deep Sea so much. This is the 11660, and I've been wearing this the most. It just suits me really well. Yeah, is it oversized? Sure it is. Is it thick, clunky? Yeah, but it's just something so you know, it just makes me feel adventurous. Yeah, it's a great watch. Right. So that's why I just don't buy. I mean, I'll probably never buy a Tudor. Have I owned Tudors before? I can't remember. Oh, I have owned a vintage Tudor 94210 Tudor chronograph with a Valjoux 7750 movement. That was a beautiful watch. I love that watch too. Another thick case watch. Maybe that's what I tend to like. You know, I like watches with a thick, beefy case that just feels so substantial on the wrist. Yeah. I really like the vintage Tudors. The only Tudors that I would buy would be the vintage Tudors, the one which, you know, all those which have says, you know, Rolex case design or something like that on the case back. You know, those are great Tudors to buy. I'd stay away from modern Tudors with the new in-house movements. They are just a little bit too. I just don't like Tudors with the in-house movements. You know, they're not supposed to have in-house movements. That's not what they were conceived to be. Yeah, I think better alternatives to the Tudor probably be like, you know, Omegas and Breitlings. And let's face it, yeah, I think people who buy Tudors deep down, they just eventually gravitate towards Rolex. Right, may not like to hear that, but I think deep down, you know, Tudor owners, they'll just slowly make their way towards a Submariner. Right, let's say you own a Black Bay, probably sometime down the line when money becomes a little bit more abundant, you probably go grab a Submariner or something like that. But I find it a bit of a shame because, you know, if at the same price point you could go dabble in other brands like Omega, Breitling, IWC's Aquatimer, you know, not really my thing, but, you know, Omega Seamasters, Breitling, Super Oceans, you know, they make great dive watches too, at probably around the same price point as Tudor. Isn't this a great 2-watch collection right here? You know, why not, right? A dress dive watch and a hardcore super dive watch. You know, this one for dressy occasions, this one for sport or adventures. Why not, right? So back to why I don't recommend Tudors. And you know, I've seen many in the flesh too. Recently went to a wedding, and I was talking watches with my brother because he recently got his Rolex Explorer back from the AD, which he sent for servicing. Big mistake. They swapped out the dial and hands, the tritium dial and hands, replaced it with Super Luminova. The polishing job they did was great, and of course the movement was great as well. But that's another topic. But anyway, another guest in that wedding party observed our interaction, and he, you know, quickly wanted to join in, and you know, he very, very proudly showed us his Black Bay. It wasn't a Black Bay 58. I think it was a smaller one. You know, I think it was that 36 mil Black Bay, and by gosh, it was so unimpressive. I hate to say it, but I was like, oh my goodness. I hope he didn't buy it brand new, but it's just so underwhelming. You know, it just, yeah, it went for a very, I guess, vintagey look. You know, it looked very subdued, a bit dull. It was just so small, so dainty. Just wasn't my cup of tea, right? It wasn't my cup of tea, and I think things got a little bit awkward because, you know, he wanted to know what was on my wrist, and I was wearing my AP Royal Oak, and I just didn't want to go there with him. I don't know. I just didn't feel. I didn't feel excited to talk watches with him. I guess, you know, that's a horrible thing to say, right? Maybe he had like $1 million collection or what have you. You know, in his at home, but I highly doubt it. You know, I think if you were a serious collector, and if you were into Tudor Submariners, right, you get a Snowflake, you get a 7016 Tudor Submariner, you get a vintage Tudor Submariners, right? Those are the only Tudors, right, that I would, you know, splash money on, splurge money on. You know, vintage Tudors. Vintage Tudor chronographs, big blocks, Monte Carlos. Oh, those, I love the Tudor Monte Carlo, the vintage one. Those are beautiful. Manual wine chronograph. Whoa. That is a proper Tudor. Those are proper Tudors. Right, and great, amazing watches. Right, so stay away from the, I'm not gonna say stay away from like modern Tudors, yeah. But consider, you know, going into other brands, right? Don't get sucked into the, if you have the option, don't get sucked into the Rolex eco. What was the word? The Rolex ecosystem. Right, take this opportunity. You know, these things are expensive, but for the same price, you know, go for a Seamaster, go for a Breitling Super Ocean, go for those with like ETA movements or whatever. You know, great, iconic pieces, easy to service, and you know, gives you some variety. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit stuck in my collection in the sense that it's kind of hard to, you know, to appreciate watches at that level, which is sad. You know, it sounds disgusting, I know that, right? But if I were to buy a Seamaster or a Super Ocean, right, and I still have these two pieces, you know, I'm kind of like, what am I doing here, right? I don't, you know, these things are expensive, and I want to wear these watches, and that's why I don't, you know, I don't have a Seamaster or a Breitling Super Ocean. But if I were starting out again in my watch collecting, I would definitely go Omega or Breitling than a Tudor. Anyway, just been rambling on, and I love the deep sea. This watch really caught me by surprise. I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did. You know, you hear a lot of negative things said about the deep sea, how it's disproportionate, or it's too top heavy. But I have to say, I just absolutely love this watch. You know, this is what a modern Rolex should be. It epitomizes the modern Rolex. Overly engineered to 3,900 meters. But I just love the crystal. It gives you that vintage look, the vintage acrylic look, how it refracts the light. Of course, you got a modern ceramic bezel, which is great, you know. And I think these watches are reasonably priced in today's Rolex market. Yeah, these go for less than the ceramic Submariners, and it's just different, right? It's just different, but you still have that handsome black on black look, which I honestly like. You know, I do like that, right? It's different. It's different enough from a Submariner, but still just as cool, right? If you know what I mean, yeah. Even the end links, some people complain that the end links kind of stick out. They prefer it to be flush, but I say it gives it character, you know. It kind of evens things out because it's so thick. It needs to be, you know, it makes it a little bit more proportional with the end links kind of protruding out just a little bit. It gives it some depth. So, yeah, I don't know what I've been rambling about. Yeah, so don't buy Tudor, go Breitling or Omega, and then, you know, slowly work your way up towards, say, a Rolex dive watch. Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching. I'm out. Bye.